Flight Dreams, a Mark Manning mystery, Book 1. Author, Michael Kraft. Publisher, Open Road Integrated Media, New York. Narrator, Eric Ost. Friday, October 16, 77 days till deadline. Jerry Klein, Chief Operating Officer of Carter Air, sits behind the big mahogany desk in front of a big window in his big office. The little man rises, curling his lips into a little smile as Manning is escorted into the room. The reporter tells him as they shake hands, "I enjoyed getting to know you at Roxanne's party last week. Thanks, Jerry, for taking time to see me." "My pleasure." Klein gestures that they should sit. "I'm totally at your service. Anything to help solve this mystery." Two ornately framed photos, one of the heirs, the other of company founder Ridgely Carter, are conspicuous among the few articles atop Klein's clean desk. Manning settles into his chair, flips open his notepad, and uncaps his pen. He's had a few days to look into Klein's background. The Journal's business editor, as well as Roxanne, confirmed Manning's impression of the timid man who was a protege of Ridgely Carter and a close friend to Helena after she was widowed. Klein is regarded as a crack accountant, intellectually well qualified for the position that was thrust upon him, but only awkwardly suited to its trappings. During his 7 years at the airline's helm, he has grown to be an able administrator, but has never donned the mantle of leadership worn so naturally by his charismatic mentor. Klein says, "Most folks assume Helena's dead, but you have doubts. I share those doubts, and I'm grateful for your persistence. I'm also sorry that your convictions have put you in such a fix with Nathan Kane." Klein sees that Manning is surprised that he knows of the ultimatum, so he explains. "Nathan phoned to explain what had happened. He thought I'd be interested." Manning asked, "Do you know him well?" "Only through the Carters, and they're gone, of course. When Ridgely was alive, Nathan was a frequent guest at the estate, as I was, so we became well acquainted, but he's always struck me as an odd duck. Rather cold. Not someone I'd choose to spend time with on my own. So we have it." Klein pauses while Manning finishes making a note, then tells him, "Enough of unsavory subjects. We were talking about Helena. Have you learned anything at all that convinces you she's alive?" Manning breathes an exasperated sigh. "I got a fresh lead last week from Father Matthew Carey at St. Jerome's in Bluff Shores, but it didn't pan out. Even though Carey wasn't entirely forthright with me, I was intrigued by his story of a community of reactionary Catholics. It's a little desert town called Assumption. Apparently Helena had an interest in this movement, so I did some checking of my own to see if maybe she had gone there. I phoned Father James McMullen, who runs the town and reports to some cardinal in Belgium." "Cardinal Levesque," says Klein. "Right," says Manning, surprised that Klein would know such a detail. McMullen seemed flustered by my call, which heightened my suspicions. But when I suggested that he might have some knowledge of Helena Carter's whereabouts, he got miffed and pointed out that the terms of Helena's will are well known. Her fortune will go to the mainstream church, he told me. What would be my motive for deception? "What indeed," says Klein, deep in thought. "I have to admit he had me," says Manning. His logic was simple and airtight. So I apologized, hung up, and lost the only decent lead I had. Refocusing their talk, he asked Klein, "How do you feel about the will?" "It's Helena's money," he answers with candor. "Personally, I don't begrudge the church or the Federated Cat Clubs her fortune. As COO of Carter Air, though I don't relish the intrusion of new partners in the business. They'll most likely want to liquidate their assets, which means a public stock offering, and the inevitable complications that go with it." "It's amazing that Carter Air has managed to remain private this long," notes Manning. "The company has a long history of innovation and progressive management. I can appreciate your pride in it." "That was all Ridgely's doing," says Klein. "He built the company like a loving father. As a result, we've always enjoyed harmonious relations with our unions and have rarely been affected by strikes. He was constantly looking for new ways, little ways, to do better. During his last year with us, for example, Carter Air became the first airline to offer public phone service on every flight. Since then, the company has continued to thrive during a period when many other airlines have folded or been forced to merge. I recognize that my role here is essentially a caretaker's, but I think I can take a measure of pride in knowing I've preserved what Ridgely worked so hard to build. You certainly can, Manning assures him. Then he asks, as long as we're on the topic of the company's finances, would you be willing to go more specific on a few matters? Klein grins. I'm sure you can appreciate that I wouldn't normally be inclined to share a private company's financial figures with the press, but these are unusual circumstances. And there's nothing to hide. Even Hank Ferret, a damn tough lawyer appointed by the court to serve as Helena's guardian ad litem, has been completely satisfied with our accounting. Besides, it seems only fair to supply you with the same information I gave the Post. What? Humphrey Hastings was here yesterday, explains Klein, while pulling several bulging files from a drawer and presenting them to Manning for his perusal. Klein guides Manning through the material, pointing out significant documents, answering questions, ordering copies of spreadsheets from one of his secretaries. Manning dutifully takes notes and arranges his own file of the copies he is given, but after a half hour of this number crunching, he needs to come up for air. I'm sorry to interrupt, Jerry, but I'm finding it hard to concentrate on all this. Something is troubling me. Humphrey Hastings. I can't quite believe that he was actually here doing the grunt work of reporting. Either he's turned over a new leaf, or I badly misjudged him. Klein laughs, having wondered how long Manning would wait before questioning him about the other reporter's visit. The truth is, Mark, that Hastings didn't give a damn about the financial. He rushed me through my report and shoved the spreadsheets into his briefcase, like so much trash. Indignation colors Klein's voice as he taps the folders on the desk. These numbers represent the labors of thousands of people spanning 2 generations, and he showed no interest whatsoever in the privileged information I offered him. With uncharacteristic fire, he concludes, the fat bastard. Relieved and amused, Manning asks, what was he interested in? Arthur Mendel, the houseman at the Carter estate. Ah. Hastings kept pumping me for information about the man, regardless of where I steered the conversation. It was clear from his questions that he sees Arthur as a convenient scapegoat, a scheming, demented psychopath. That sweet old guy, Manning smirks at the notion, but recognizes that his attitude toward Mendel has been colored by knowledge of the gambling incident. It's ridiculous, of course. Arthur has been with the Carters longer than I can remember. His loyalty is transparent to anyone who talks to him. Hump wouldn't think of that tactic. So I'd better drive up to Bluff Shores next week and talk to Arthur again myself. Manning notes it on his pad, then tells Klein, Hasty may have no appetite for your financials, Jerry, but I do. Shall we get back to them? With pleasure. Another half hour of amortizations and accruals, profits and losses, returns on investments, and Manning is fully satisfied with the sound management of both the airline and the Carter estate. The secretary enters Klein's office to deliver one last set of photocopies. Mr. Manning, she says, Roxanne Exner just phoned and asked me to give you a message. She and a friend are scheduled for a social engagement at your apartment this evening, but she has a conflict and must cancel. She's terribly sorry and wonders if it's all right for her friend to come alone. Manning coughs and covers his mouth to conceal a grin, while saying to the woman, Could you return a message for me, please? Ask Miss Exner to have Mr. Waite come over around 8. Why in hell didn't I take care of this earlier, wonders Manning, as he struggles to hang a painting that has leaned for months against a bare wall in his loft. It's an oil, or is it acrylic? Such details are beyond him in either case. It's 5 feet square, and hanging it is not a one-man job. Even with a good stepladder, he manages at last to slip the wire over the hook, checks the top edge with a level, then climbs down the ladder and steps back to pass judgment. He's pleased. The windowless wall is at least 20 feet high. It needed something. Manning first noticed the painting in one of the little galleries off Michigan Avenue, richly detailed but with a restrained palette. It appealed to him at once. The dealer assured him that the artist was significant, and that the painting, which would surely appreciate in value, was a wise investment. Now it hangs in its intended spot, lending a note of refinement to its sparse surroundings. "Nice," says Manning loud. "Glad you like it," he reminds himself. "It cost as much as a good used car." He glances at his watch and confirms that he's running late. It's 28, and he suspects that Neil will be punctual. He stashes the ladder and tools in a closet, clears up some kitchen debris, and takes off his shirt as he heads toward the shower. At 8:01, while Manning inspects the results of his grooming in a mirror, a buzzer announces that Neil, as predicted, is prompt. Unsure of what the evening may hold, even more uncertain of what he wants it to hold, Manning takes a deep breath, summoning courage before crossing the apartment to answer the door. He swings it open and cannot control the goofy smile that spreads across his face. "Hi, Neil." "Hello there. Yourself," says Neil, stepping inside. He carries a couple of shopping bags and seems winded, explaining, "I decided to walk, and halfway here it clouded over and threatened to pour." Manning takes one of the bags and leads Neil to the kitchen, where they unload the contents onto the counter. "You needn't have brought all this," says Manning, surveying an assortment of delicacies that includes fresh breads, pâté, chocolate truffles, and several bottles of good wine. "We didn't know what you'd be serving," says Neil. "And Rox felt guilty about canceling, so she stocked me up with goodies to offer as amends." "Too kind. Thanks to you both." Manning stows some of the items in the refrigerator, then extracts from the freezer a bottle of Japanese vodka, offering, "Drink?" "You temptress," says Neil, laughing, while Manning performs the ritual of the orange peel. As they clink their glasses, Manning says softly, "Compay." Neil winks at him. They taste their drinks. Then Neil asks, "Aren't you going to show me around?" "What a wonderful space." Manning leads them away from the galley kitchen and into the main living area of the loft. Their footfalls reverberate in the big room. "The cement floor is not an urban design statement," Manning assures Neil, "nor is it entirely the result of a cash crunch. Truth is, I can't decide how I want to finish it." "Then you're wise to wait," Neil tells him. "Sometimes your vision of a space has to evolve over time, and this space has tons of potential. It's worth developing carefully with sure steps. Meanwhile, you seem comfortable enough, and you've got plenty of room. There's no hurry." Pointedly he adds, "It's not as if you've got kids to raise here." "You live alone, don't you?" asks Manning. "Roxanne said you designed your own house. I'd like to hear about it." "Whoa," says Neil, reining in the conversation. "If you get me talking about that, I could blather all night." Manning reminds him, "I'm not going anywhere." Rain begins to fall heavily outdoors, but there is no wind to drive it, and it streams down the huge panes of the window, reflecting light from within the apartment. Dances on the slithering fingers of water, black against the lakefront sky. After an awkward silence broken only by the sound of rain, Manning says, "It's a terrible thing to admit, but I'm glad Roxanne couldn't make it tonight. I want to get to know you better. I can't quite believe you're here." Neil steps to Manning and spreads his arm to hold him in a clumsy embrace, both of them careful not to spill their drinks. As Neil gazes over Manning's shoulder toward the opposite wall, something catches his eye. "My God, Mark, it's a bird!" "What?" Alarmed Manning turns to look, jostling both drinks. "The painting! It's a Clarence bird," he explains, whisking vodka from his sleeve while walking over for a closer look. "Where did you get it?" "A little gallery not far from here." "You mean you've heard of this guy?" "Of course. He's awfully significant. At least he will be." "So I've been told," Manning says with a wry laugh. Neil shoots him a knowing glance. "A shrewd investment, Mark?" "It wasn't an investment," he insists. "I bought it because I liked it. I've never bought a painting before, but I see something in this one that speaks to me, that actually has something to say. Listen, Neil, I'm a writer, and I work with other writers. Lots of word people, from reporters and editors to lawyers and politicians. Most of them seem to think that the only worthwhile task for the mind is to make one word follow another. The brain feeds the mouth or the pen, yet the eye never seems to feed the brain. I haven't known many artists, painters, and sculptors, or even architects, but I've always assumed that they don't think very clearly, that they must be slaves to the realm of emotions. As a result, I've been skeptical of what artists try to foist upon us as their work. You go to a gallery and read the little cards posted next to each artifact, or you wade through the statement the artist has written for the show catalog, and the only way you can react is, "My God, what garbage." Incredibly, these statements seem to be given as much weight as the art itself. It's nothing more than academic drivel intended to justify meaningless junk by making it appear profound. I'm sorry if I seem closed-minded in this attitude. I've sincerely tried to understand the art of our times, but I can't. And I won't pay lip service to a sham. I wish I had the background to appreciate the art of other ages, because I sense there's something there that's simply lacking today. Don't get me wrong, I'm not so naive as to suggest that it's only valid to paint pictures that look like pictures. I'm sure that visual abstraction can be meaningful and moving. After all, the power of mental abstraction is among the most extraordinary of all human traits. But I've rarely seen an artist pull it off convincingly. Splash painting, finger painting is a diversion of children, nothing more. It is not art. Does it all even matter? I wish I understood. Manning falls silent. He has said far more than he intended, and he fears that Neil may be offended by views that seem ignorant or, worse, didactic. Neil has listened carefully. His features reveal no reaction to Manning's words, and the pause in their conversation is magnified by mutual anticipation. Neil decides that it's time to share a few ideals of his own. "You do understand," he assures Manning, "far more deeply than most self-proclaimed artists ever begin to grasp. I went to art school to become a designer, to get a degree as an architect. I attended classes side by side with others who were there to get a degree as a painter, sculptor, printmaker, what have you. All the degree guarantees, of course, is that we've been exposed to a regimen of techniques and, one may hope, a body of aesthetic thought. That's it, kid. An art degree means nothing else. Yet, art and practice has become a purely academic discipline. And the result speaks for itself. Artists go to school, they're taught to be open-minded and sensitive. They learn that method and logic and thought itself are alien to the visual arts. The only purpose left for words is to support the next artistic trend with rhetorical bullshit that replaces meaning with a skin of profundity. It is a hoax. It leaves me frustrated, bewildered, and the one question that gnaws at me every time I stroll through a gallery or pick up a copy of Art News is this: just how seriously do these people take themselves deep down inside when they're alone in bed at night with the lights off and no other stimulus except the churning of their own brains? Do they believe the things they paint? Do they believe the things they say to support their art? You know what scares me, Mark? I think they do believe it. All of it. They willingly submitted to the indoctrination. They swallowed it whole. And now they're playing the game themselves. That, all too often, is the art of our age. Manning's green eyes pierce Neil's with a clarity and directness that shoot through Neil and rest in his stomach. The penetration of one mind by the other is so complete and reciprocal that neither of them can evade its carnal overtones. "Thank you," says Manning. Neil doesn't ask what for. He knows, as Manning does, that something has happened. He recognizes that they have achieved a level of communication that embraces words and thoughts, emotions and intellect. As if emerging from a daze, Neil asks, "Where were we?" "I was showing you the apartment," Manning reminds him. "Not that there's much to show. Like most lofts, it's basically one big room, and as you can see, it's nearly empty." He waves an arm to encompass the whole condominium, which lacks all furniture other than a bed, a small dining table with its chairs. "I love raw space," says Neil. Must be the architect in me. There's so much you can do with this. The fixtures and built-ins are first rate. Mind if I snoop around? In addition to the entrance, the apartment contains only two other doors, located on the wall behind the bed, flanking it. One leads to the bathroom, indicating the other. Neil asks, "What's this?" "Closet," says Manning. "It's huge. Take a look." Then he adds, "But please, no closet jokes." Neil rolls his eyes, then opens the door, which switches on a light. Inside is a large windowless room that could easily double as a storeroom, or even a study. It contains Manning's clothes, and Neil feels a tinge of excitement in stealing this intimate glimpse of his new friend's life. Manning's wardrobe is arranged, as Neil would have guessed, with neatness and precision. There is an inordinate number of khaki slacks. Shirts, all white or pastel, are grouped according to hue, and an ironing board stands ready for last-minute touch-ups. The room's sole element of clutter is the well-worn pair of Reeboks, tossed in the corner with a pair of nylon shorts. "I see you're a runner," says Neil, closing the closet door. "I wouldn't quite call myself a runner," Manning tells him, "if that implies I'm avid about it, because I'm not. Now and then, on a beautiful day or at the end of a bad one, I like to pound off 2 or 3 miles. 4 or 5 if I'm ambitious, but I have no interest in distance and even less in speed." "A sensible approach," Neil approves. "We should run together sometime, although it's been raining since I arrived last week." "Here's a better idea. Maybe you could visit Phoenix this winter. It's plenty dry there, and we could run in the mountains every morning. It's wonderful to be up early under a warm winter sun, sweating, especially when you know that everyone back home is freezing." "That sounds great," says Manning. "I haven't taken a winter vacation in years. We'll see." "But," adds Neil, raising a note of caution, "there's not much else to do there. I suppose we could watch TV. There's our local crackpot evangelist of the airways, Brother Bert. He's always good for a laugh." Neil's playful tone now turns suggestive. We could invent our own activities," Manning repeats. "We'll see." He checks his watch. "Let me get you a fresh drink, then I'd better get dinner going. Care to help?" "Natch." Manning busies himself in the kitchen, putting Neil in charge of the table, which must first be cleared of some paperwork. Manning explains over his shoulder. "I made copies of the plans of the loft, and I've been trying to work up a few ideas without success. I'm afraid just stow all that under the bed." Neil finds a clean set of the plans and puts it aside, along with an extra copy of a document titled Codes and Covenants. He slips these into one of his shopping bags before putting the rest of the material away. While Neil fusses with the table setting, Manning asks, "Would you like to put on some music?" "Thanks," replies Neil, "but I've had my fill of it this week. You know how carried away rocks can get. Let's keep things quiet tonight." Amen. Within a half hour, they are seated at the little table together. Manning has prepared a simple steak dinner, supplemented with brioche and a Grand Cru Bordeaux from Roxanne's care package. Candles are lit, flowers are arranged, and the rain beyond the windows is now driven in sheets by a gusty wind. The cozy setting is overtly romantic, but the conversation is limited to small talk about the food, the weather, the missing heiress. Neil eats his last bite of tenderloin, sets down his fork, and dabs his lips with his napkin. Fingering the stem of his wine glass, he asks, "Why'd you invite me here tonight?" "To see the loft." "Yes." "There may have been other reasons. I'm not sure. Why'd you come here tonight?" "To see the loft. To find out why you asked me. Most important, to get to know you better." He pauses before getting to the point. "I like you, Mark. And if there's any kind of relationship that's possible between us, I'm interested. More than interested. But I will not seduce you." Manning grins. "Are you sure you haven't already?" "Not actively." "I'm sure of that. I've been too careful. If somehow you interpret my friendliness or my personality or even my very presence as a form of seduction, that's your reaction to the way I am." "That is exactly my reaction to the way you are. May I ask you something directly, Mark? Have you ever had sex with a man?" "No." Neil looks at him skeptically. "Truly, Neil, I haven't. Not as an adult. Sure, lads play around, and I was no different, but I've never done it in a mature, willful sense." "You've never even been approached?" asks Neil, his voice colored with disbelief as he openly sizes up Manning. Oh, yes, I have. Just once. Thank God, says Neil. I'd be amazed if no one had ever tried. A guy got suggestive at a party once. I was repulsed, so I left. Repulsed by the suggestion? No. By the person. He was drunk and obnoxious, and, well, not very attractive. Oh, Neil says softly, drawing out the monosyllable as he turns his head to gaze at the rain. Thinking, and then he turns back to Manning, peers at him, and asks with a voice that sounds almost accusing. Suppose this guy had been sober and pleasant and built like an Adonis. Then what? I've no idea. Under the real circumstances, his suggestion was unthinkable. Maybe I've been kidding myself, but I never seriously weighed the possibility of sex with a man until I met you. Manning stopped short, though he has picked his words carefully. He is stunned to hear the admission from his own mouth. Neil asks, what are your qualms? Times have changed a lot since I was young. There's AIDS, of course, and there are still prejudices, but being gay doesn't seem to have the stigma it used to. And now they say it's in your genes, and in some circles it's out fashionable. Still, there's something about sexual identity that's deep and, yes, irrational. But it's real, almost tangible. People always want a label. They think of themselves as straight or gay or maybe somewhere in between, but they always define it. I'll soon turn 40, Neil, and I've never before dealt with the prospect of consciously labeling myself gay or any of the other names they call you. Do I want you? Do I want to lie with you and indulge a nagging curiosity? Yes, I'd be a liar if I told you or myself otherwise, but the label scares me. Even if no one else knew, I would. I'd be waiting there with the label, and I don't know what it would do to me. This fear must strike you as silly or trivial, and I'd even understand if you found it insulting. I mean, you seem to have no difficulty coping with all this. This may come as a shock, Mark, but your label crisis works both ways. I'd hate like hell for people to label me straight, a het, a breeder. That would be an identity crisis every bit as deep and real as the one you're flirting with. So I understand your concerns. I'm glad you've raised them, because I would not want to be the person who saddles you with confusion or guilt. You mean far too much to me. That's why I won't seduce you. It would be too easy. Too easy for me to get away with, and too easy for you to dismiss. When it happens, if it happens, there'll be the recognition that complete, powerful, lusty sex involves a certain responsibility and perhaps even commitment. If it happens, Neil stops talking and searches Manning's face for some reaction to his words. Manning peers back at first with a blank expression. Then he smiles. Good, he says. If it happens, it'll be just as you've described. There'll be no room for self-doubt, let alone guilt. Manning swallows hard, not daring to meet Neil's stare as he continues. I hope it happens, but wanting things is a far cry from having them. There's always a price, and the price may be too high for me. Understood, says Neil with quiet finality. And now that the great looming question mark of the evening has been dispelled, shall we move on to frothier concerns like dessert? Great idea. Manning rises and begins to clear the table as Neil pushes his chair back and slouches into it, getting relaxed. Manning turns to remind him, You still haven't told me about the house you built. I want to hear everything. Neil needs no further prompting to launch into an energetic recounting of the project in which he has clearly staked great professional pride. Manning is fascinated by the tale, interrupting to pose thoughtful questions that in turn refuel Neil's enthusiasm. Hours pass as dessert leads to coffee to cognac. The two men have talked continuously, exhausting the topic of Neil's house, moving on to the random trifles found so revealing by those who are getting to know one another. It is well past midnight. The storm howls beyond the windows. The candles on the table have burned low. Manning tells Neil, time to make a decision about something. It's raining like hell, and there are no cabs on the street. You'd get stoked trying to find one. Would you like to spend the night here? No sex. It is both a question and a stipulation. No, says Manny, grinning. I'd love to stay, but I'd better call Roxanne. She'll be wondering, I'm sure. I'm sure, echoes Manny while handing Neil the phone. Neil dials, then waits while the other phone rings. Hi, Rox. It's me. Yes, a wonderful evening, thanks. I hope yours wasn't too awful at the office. Roxanne, I think I'll be staying here tonight. The rain, you know? Just wanted to tell you not to wait up. He pauses, blinks, and puts back the receiver. What'd she say? Asks Manny. She hung up. Manning whistles pensively. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.